or like in a second.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the June 23rd meeting of the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee. Notice, members of this board may participate remotely by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency, novel coronavirus pandemic, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start by having Matthew call the roll, and then we will do a motion for the adoption of the agenda and the minutes.
All right. Aaron. No Aaron today. Armand.
Good afternoon.
Bree.
Here.
Dan.
Here. Dan Miller, aye.
Oh, sorry. I'll go last names. Dan Booty and then Dan Miller both said aye. Great. Deanna Newman. Okay. Alyssa for roll.
Here.
Georgiana. Greg.
Here.
All right. Heather Gillett.
Here.
Tyler Pedersen.
Here.
Janice Gepner.
Here.
Jenny Borden.
Here.
Jesse Thornson.
Here.
Joey Senker. John Barabs.
Here.
Vern Kosak.
Present.
Aiden Novak.
Here.
Kyle Larson. I think said he couldn't be here. Marty Grimes. Matthew Hendricks. Maya Sheikh. Oh, did I hear a voice? No, okay. Maya.
Present.
Natalie Wagner.
Present.
See you there. All right. Philip Musig.
Here.
Robin Garwood.
Here.
Steve Elmer.
Yep, I'm here.
And then Wes Durham.
Here.
Did I miss anybody? I guess staff Chris.
Here.
Anybody else? Okay, Milson's not here today, I think, obviously, at this point. And so we'll look forward to having her at the next one. Chair, back to you.
Thanks. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda and accept the May 26th Bicycle Advisory Committee minutes. Before that, I do have a question for you, Matthew and Chris. Looks like in LIMS, it's now attaching our 5E and engineering subcommittee items as minutes as opposed to committee notes. We've never typically approved those as formal minutes before. So I just wanted to ask if that was just to get things out or if we're being asked to formally approve our committee notes moving forward.
I believe it was just to share them, and we don't need to formally adopt those or anything like that. Okay. We haven't in the past, at least, like you said.
Okay. So right. looking and we'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda and then the May 26th minute.
So moved. Garwood.
Is there a second?
I would second. Philip.
Any discussion or changes to the minutes? All right. With that, I will have Matthew call the roll again for a vote.
Okay, and we'll go faster this time with all first names. So please be ready. Armand?
Aye.
Bree?
Aye.
Dan? Booty?
Aye.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
not Alyssa, not Greg. Heather,
Aye.
Tyler,
Aye.
Janice,
Yes.
Jennifer.
I guess I'm gonna abstain since I wasn't there.
Okay. Jesse,
Aye.
Joey. Oh, Joey, no. John,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Cadence,
Aye.
Maya,
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
Philip,
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Wes,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes, and I should announce myself present as well. So there we go.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
18 yeses.
All right. With that, I will turn it over to Bree and Heather for the 5Es subcommittee report.
Hi. So thanks for the folks that were able to join us for the first BAC ride of the pandemic, I guess. And yeah, it was really fun. 13 people started on the ride, and then we headed from Gold Medal Park downtown to look at the Hennepin tactile edge. I have some photos. Oh, great. So yeah, so I realized that I didn't take any photos of the ride, but fortunately, Cadence, John, and Dan did. So I'm going to share just a few of those right now. Let's see, does this work? I have not shared my screen before. Do you see it? No. Maybe I can't share my screen.
No, not yet.
Huh.
No.
Huh. How do you usually share?
After
Oh.
you click the button, do you have to select a screen or a window or something?
It just says open share tray. What's
I can
that?
share some photos if you give me about 2 minutes to pull my folder out.
Cool. Yeah, it's just like a blank thing. Do I do this? No, it didn't work. Oh no. Sorry, everyone. I'm
so
bad
Bree,
at. Uh-huh.
are you hitting the upward arrow that says share content?
It's a down arrow.
I wonder if yours is different than ours. Is that right, Chris? Maybe.
Sometimes the share
Could
tray
be.
gets hidden. It's like pops up in a different window.
Oh, okay. So I see the open share. Do I pull things into it?
You click, you should be able to, when you see the share content screen, like you should be able to click on the screen that you actually want to share.
Yeah, maybe.
Or in the window, you could expand and pick from that.
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing's popping up. So.
Okay.
Bree, did you already open up? Do you have somewhere on your desktop, do you have the open file of photos?
Yes.
Okay, so it should show up in the things to click on to share.
Oh, it's files, but no, it's just a blank thing. So, so yeah, I'll just talk about it while John gets going, and then I'll just email them out to folks. So yeah, once we got to the tactile strip, we stopped just like, let's see, what west of Pantages, I think. So right in that area, in between Pantages and Orpheum, because the tactile strip is only in the area of the bus stops that are on Hennepin. So we were able to stop, and a staff member was there who's in charge of the like downtown area for Public Works came out and chatted with us about the tactile strip as well. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there were more critiques than, whoa, this is amazing, things. And then it just seemed that it just wasn't enough of a separation, that folks would be, oh, thank you, John.
Yes, I will.
Cool.
Should I just go through them? I have maybe 15 photos, and I can fast forward to where you're talking about.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we just met at gold medal. Thanks, John. Oh, these are fun.
And Matthew led the way.
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
there we
here
are.
we are in front of the Pantages on Hennepin Avenue. And we stopped here and just admired the newly opened Bikeway and looked at you can see this strip right here is the separation between the pedestrians and the Bikeway. And that was something that was brand new to me. I had not seen that before. And it's made out of a plastic material, and it's actually screwed into the pavement. And I guess there was some concern that it might be slippery when wet, although it does have some, texture to it. But we spent a good 15 minutes discussing the merits of the different design options, and here's our friend. And Matthew, forgive me, I forgot his name.
His name is Rick Kreiser, and he's the project manager for Hennepin downtown in the construction phase.
And he was wonderful as far as explaining the process and just some of the various thinking that went in behind this particular design. And as you can see, this is now looking west on Hennepin Avenue, or southwest, I guess. And the bicycle lane continues on for a number of blocks. So this is the area that's probably 95% complete. And right here, this is a temporary plywood area where the bus, there'll be a bus shelter installed here. Right now, it's just plywood, and they covered it with some sort of a tarp. So there's still some more work that needs to be done, but I thought that this is a pretty good indication of what the Hennepin Avenue design looks like.
John, I'm just going to jump in for folks on the phone and visually describe what's happening in this photo. So you mentioned we're looking southwest on Hennepin. To the sort of right side is the sidewalk. Then there is the tactile strip, which is maybe 6 inches wide, 12 inches wide, not terribly wide. It's kind of a brown color, and it has a lot of long bumps on it. And then there's another small strip of sort of regular sidewalk colored concrete. And then there is kind of on the left side of the pathway, there's the darker dyed concrete to indicate the bikeway. And then to the left of that is the temporary shelter John mentioned.
Great. I think that this is pretty much it.
And it looks like Janice has their hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, well, we had a few specific comments. One of them was that they print more bike pictures, particularly where, like they had the pictures of bikes on the bike. The idea is to be able to separate bikes and peds. And they had pictures of the bikes at the streets, but not mid-block. And we had made a suggestion that they should add bike images mid-block, particularly outside theaters or bus stops, places where people were likely to walk so that they would see them. Otherwise, they wouldn't know that that was supposed to be a bike trail. Anyway, just wondering if we wanted to have a motion to that effect. In which case I could make a motion that we say we really, I mean, something that like we support it. We thought it was a great idea, but we also suggest that they have more bike symbols in places where there would be a lot of pedestrians.
Can we
But it's up to
have
you,
the
Bree, if you think we
discussion
don't.
first and
Sure,
then see
absolutely.
if we want to do like a combined motion if other
Sure,
people have ideas?
absolutely.
Thank you, Janice. Dan? Moody?
Yeah, Dan Miller and I both rode over the tactile strip a bit, and I would say the good news is that even narrow tires won't get stuck in there and cause you to fall. But because of that, because they're shallow enough where that's not a problem, then it's also not quite as clear of a delineator. So you kind of have pros and cons to that aspect.
John, could you pull up your photos again, just so like as we're discussing it, people can visualize it better if they weren't on the ride?
Sure.
You.
I got to open up my cloud again.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. Like my opinion of that section of Hennepin with the tactile strip is that once there are more people back in downtown, especially during busy times when, you know, the theaters are open and people are going to shows, is that the bike lane will become obsolete because pedestrians walking and rolling will just take over that entire space. And once it gets, you know, that crowded downtown, you can't really see much of the sidewalk and the bike lane. So that is my concern for that. And also, you know, seeing it in person, if this is for accessibility, I think it would be challenging for those who are visually impaired and do the cane sweep, since they'll be following in between a bike lane and, thank you, the the sidewalk. So it might, you know, get in the way of those folks going back and forth. And then also because I wasn't aware that it was just like at the bus stop areas. So I don't know if it'd be confusing for folks when it just ends and that's it. So yeah, I mean, I really like that there was a bike lane on Hennepin, along Hennepin, but I wish with the street construction that they would have instead put the trees in between the sidewalk and the bike area, so then that'd be a clearer delineation between the two. And I think that would be better for walking and rolling folks too, just so they wouldn't be confused. Okay, Cadence.
Yeah, I also just wanted to share too that there are parts of the bikeway that are incomplete and or will need to be reinstalled, which we discovered on our field trip. So it has to do with those planter boxes on the southern portion. I don't think that we got any pictures. I neglected to snap any pictures of that. But basically, there's not a good vertical delineator between the edge of the pavement. So the bikeway is right on these planter boxes. So if you maybe didn't have as strong of control over your front wheel, or if it was slippery for whatever reason, you might be going into a planter bed. I assume that that is going to be fixed with the contractor, Matthew, but I think it could just be the nature of the project still ongoing, but we got to see some of the ways in which contracted plans don't always match what is planned on paper.
And maybe just to further articulate the planter, it's like imagine where the edge of the black concrete is, and then it's maybe like that. So I guess what's that, like 2-3 inches down to like.
Matthew, this is Alyssa. I have a photo. If I can bump John off screen sharing.
Sure, please.
And then Matthew, if you could describe what's in the photo for folks on the phone.
Yeah, so this idea of a planter is just like, a planted space with flowers, and in some cases there's a tree, not the one that we're on here, but I guess maybe on the right side there's the sidewalk or pedestrian access route, and then there's these spaces where there's the planters that have some inlets in them, so water from the sidewalk can go into the planters, so it's part of our green infrastructure efforts. And then basically where the bikeway is directly adjacent to the planter, there's a fairly significant drop, what I would say like 2 to 3 inches down, so vertically down, right, to the planter space. And in some of the cases not pictured in the photo, it's fully walled off, so to speak, with like I don't know, a foot, maybe like a foot high concrete sort of barrier. But in this case, it's not there. So this has been brought to the attention of the appropriate people. And I'll leave it at that for now. And I guess, just for the, this is a technical group. So there's our state aid rules that that designate how much of a buffer space there needs to be, so a clear zone, and so that's part of the problem, where there's not supposed to be any vertical anything vertical within a 2-foot clear zone of the bikeway. So this is essentially why you don't want to hit something that comes up vertically, and you don't want to fall into anything that goes down vertically. So that's just sometimes you wonder why certain standards exist, and that's basically why in this case.
And Matthew, on the right there, in that picture, you could kind of see the buffer, right? When we compared that one to the others, it looked like they had maybe just continued cutting out of the buffer, and then that's why there's no wall installed there, because the wall would have gone straight across. You can see like in that picture where the wall ends, and it would have just gone across there, and then there would still be the buffer.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
if
so
you down in the lower right corner of that picture, you can see that there is that buffer still, but they just cut out the buffer.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is
Well
right
said.
outside the CVS on Hennepin. I think kitty corner from the Lunds and Byerly's. Because if I remember that this was like the only one that was like this. All the other ones had the concrete you see on the back by the promenade, and that black kind of fence type structure.
Yeah, I
around.
would say this is the only block. I think there's 2 on this block, but the others on the block or on the rest of the corridor have like the fencing or whatever, the barrier.
Yeah. And Cadence had a good picture of another, I guess, a mistake of a bike box on, I believe, 12th and Hennepin. Cadence, are you willing to share your screen since mine doesn't work? If possible.
Cadence, you're muted.
Yeah. Sorry, I just have to navigate to my email real quick to pull that up. So it'll just take me a second.
Thanks.
While you do that, I'll just make a note that we were hoping, I think, to spend about a half hour on the 5E subcommittee report. So we've got maybe another 5 to 7 minutes left on that before we need to flip over to engineering to stay on track for our guests later in the meeting. So
Thank you.
Okay, ignore all of my open tabs. So if y'all can see this, so we're looking at, so we're standing on the southwest corner of this intersection, and you can actually see, if you can see my cursor, tire tread marks of right turning vehicular motion across this box. And so here's the edge of the curb. This bike box that I'm tracing with my cursor should have been moved further west to align with the edge of the curb, instead of being, so you can see where these bike tires are, where people had pulled off on the sidewalk. are essentially in the roadway, and the bike box is not actually protected in any way. So for people who are biking and trying to use this to turn left onto 12th, they're really exposed to vehicular traffic turning movements. So this is something that will need to go back and be redone, correct, Matthew and Jesse?
I think that's a good question. I think we should consider the resolution on that and then including that in the resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, and with this intersection as well, it's confusing when folks are heading up 12th because it's a one-way to take a left also on Hennepin. And we even saw someone going the opposite direction on 12th using the bike lane, and it was very harrowing. And another explanation is that to the right of the bike box, or sorry, in front of the bike box, there's no longer that darker gray bike lane that's you saw earlier in the other photos, and it just goes to an on-street bike lane with just striped paint. So that is also just a transition. Okay, so it sounds like we have 3 things for resolutions in the sense of how the project is, and Janice said add bike signage on the bike lane mid-block, and then there is the flower bed to make sure that folks don't drop into it, and then thirdly the movement of the bike box to the correct spot. And yes, those are all I know of technical terms, which are 0. So someone also probably have to write the resolution, be like, yeah, that thingy that like goes into the garden bed, bad. So if anyone can help me with that.
I have one drafted up based on what I've heard.
Oh, great. Thanks, Matthew.
I'll just read it, and then if somebody else wants to make the motion as stated, how about we can do that? So the Bicycle Advisory Committee recommends adding mid-block bike stencils with directional arrows to help clarify and reinforce the bikeway versus the sidewalk space, I would say, maybe. The BAC also recommends correcting the planter box in the clear zone of the bikeway between 11th Street South and 12th Street South, and the bike box at the intersection of 12th Street South and Hennepin Ave South. That feels straightforward to me. I think we'll know what they mean, but if anybody has any corrections or suggestions, please let me know. And then somebody else make the motion, please.
I have a suggestion.
Please.
It's more of a programmatic, but maybe some education, if possible, with the businesses, particularly some of the theaters where they're queuing lines for box office or tickets, making sure that they can kind of direct their patrons to not line up perpendicular and in the bikeway, and seeing if they can like preemptively program where they should stand, and educating the business owners and staff about the best way to circulate traffic. I know it's not an infrastructure, but it's more of a programmatic piece.
So I just started writing, but can you let me know if this makes sense? The BAC also recommends working with businesses along the corridor to provide education and guidance. How do I finish that? For
Regarding the bike lane?
the use of the bike lane?
Accessibility of the bike lane?
I would say regarding possible conflicts between patrons and bike lane users.
Probably recommend the city, but it recommends this. Works with businesses now. Works with
work.
work with this. Okay.
And then I would also, on that same like vein of making sure that the city, Metro Transit, DID, and I guess the business owners all work together to make sure that in winter they clear the snow appropriately, and not just push it into each other's different lanes that they're responsible. I thought that was really interesting to learn that there was that many folks involved in maintaining the sidewalks, and that might be some confusion.
Can we pause for a second? Matthew didn't actually formally make the motion, so can someone read the motion and make the motion before we continue editing?
Did you want me to stop typing or should I finish real quick?
You can finish
Okay.
real quick because hopefully you'll be done before someone verbally gets to the end of that sentence.
Sure, Philip. I'll make the motion. I can start start to read as you type, Matthew.
This is a second.
What?
Cadence.
Just that I second as soon as you're done.
Oh, okay. All right. So the Bicycle Advisory Committee recommends adding mid-block bike stencils with directional arrows to help clarify and reinforce the bikeway versus the sidewalk space. The BAC also recommends correcting the planter box in the clear zone of the bikeway between 11th Street South and 12th Street South, and the bike box at the intersection of 12th Street South and Hennepin Avenue South. BAC also recommends the city work with businesses along the corridor to provide education and guidance regarding possible conflicts between patrons and bike lane users. Finally, the BAC recommends that the city, Downtown Improvement District, and Metro Transit work together to help make sure winter maintenance is handled well.
All right, so moved by Philip and seconded by Cadence. Any additional discussion or proposed amendments for the motion?
I guess I'll jump in just real quick just to point out, and maybe y'all don't want to say anything about it, but there's nothing about the actual tactile strip itself. I don't know if there is a strong feeling one way or the other. And the stencils are sort of related to that, but if you want to provide any guidance to Katie on this for that specific thing, now might be the time.
I don't think it's going to work. Can we put that?
I mean, there's feedback.
Oh yeah, make it sound nice. And
well, I was gonna say which doesn't seem like we don't really put feedback in a resolution. I don't think, but these are all like specific, unless there's something you want. But
how about in the title of the resolution as it's passed along? The title it uses the term downtown Hennepin Avenue South tactile strip. That phrase at least.
Or in the resolution, it could say to increase the effectiveness of the tactile strips. The Bicycle Advisory Committee recommends adding mid-block bike stencils.
Would it also be fair to say that the BAC would kindly like an update about how it's going with quantitative data in 2022? So if it's not working, that other possible design solutions could be on the table if we don't think it's going to work.
And maybe we can just say like, we're not like totally convinced that this is a solution for the goals the city has for the tactile strip. I don't like, and then we would want the quantitative update to see if that's a true hypothesis or not.
All right. Let's see. The BAC would kind of like a quantitative update on. I just kind of use casual language because I forgot what you actually said, Cadence, on on the evaluation, quantitative update on, how would you say that? How did you say that?
Matthew, can I make a recommendation?
Please.
I would say start that second paragraph. Given some of the concerns the Bicycle Advisory Committee has about conflicts between people walking and biking,
Walking and biking. Okay. I don't know if I got that right, but
Yep.
please go ahead.
and our uncertainty about the ability of the tactile strip to address those issues.
Of the ability of the address.
I believe that Alyssa had put the word "and" before uncertainty,
Okay. Thank you.
if I may.
This is a hard
And
job.
then I would just say the BAC requests a quantitative update. So that's just a
Quantitative update. Do we like on how the strip is going in 2022? I think that was my.
I think you could just say quantitative evaluation update in 2022.
Can I clarify? Are you asking for like a separate evaluation or just to hear the findings of this evaluation process? Because the 2022 thing, I don't know if this current evaluation that Katie's working on will extend to then. So if that's what you're asking for, like that to me is a little bit of a different thing. Whereas just asking for the findings of the evaluation report might not have anything to do with 2022, if that makes sense. A little bit of minutia. I think Katie will get the point, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was just thinking a year general time frame, one season each to see how it's going. I mean, if there's like a monumental degree of crashes between people biking into people walking or people walking into bikes, I think we'll hear about it on the news before that evaluation report is done.
Do we want to specify that like crashes or conflicts are particularly the thing we're wondering about here? Because I wasn't sure based on just kind of the general quantitative evaluation. I wasn't sure if that was referring to ridership versus like pedestrian numbers generally or whatnot.
Yeah, I am stuck on the quantitative part too, because I feel like I don't necessarily know what that would be versus qualitative. Like, but how about just evaluation update?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
suggest removing that. Bree, I'm curious if you think we can remove the last sentence, given
I
sort
like
of the
it
thought
so
that I inserted, and then would really like us to move forward with voting so that we can move on with the agenda.
That's fine with me. I like it too, Matthew, but it's unneeded. I mean, that's how I talk.
I know. I appreciate that so much. It's like we don't think it's good. I love that.
I don't think it's gonna work.
All right. That's just so refreshing. All right.
We've used safety and performance as sort of a standard phrase we've used before when we talk about metrics, evaluation, feedback.
I don't think we're gonna have safety metrics for
we're
a
not.
tactile strip though. I think it's gonna be like, what do people think of it?
Ah.
I mean, if people are crashing because of the strip, I'm just like gonna be wildly surprised. Like I don't think it's like a crash issue, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's more like maintenance and is it understandable? Do people like it? You know, do people that are blind or low vision actually use it and understand it? You know, those types of things. But
I will commit to, once we pass a resolution and Matthew, you send that out to appropriate staff, I will commit to following up with them and just letting them know if they have additional questions about what we're looking for. They are welcome to come to the committee and ask us those questions or to talk to them one-on-one. So.
do we need to read the whole thing again, or should we read the last paragraph that was added because nothing was changed of the top paragraph, right?
Sure. So, so the motion as it originally read that ended. BAC recommends that the city, DID, and Metro Transit work together to help make sure winter maintenance is handled well. We added, given some of the concerns the BAC has for conflicts between people walking and biking and uncertainty of the ability of the tactile strip to address those issues, the BAC requests an evaluation update in 2022.
Gotcha. All right. I think it's my job to call roll then, right?
Yes, please call the roll.
Okay. Here we go. Armand.
Sorry, aye.
Aye. Bree.
Aye.
Dan. Cody.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
Heather.
Aye.
Tyler.
Aye.
Janice.
Yes.
Jenny.
Aye.
Jesse.
Abstain.
Joey. Oh, I keep doing that. John.
Aye.
Jordan. No Jordan. Okay. Cadence.
Aye.
Aya.
Aye.
Natalie.
I think you said Natalie. Aye.
Yep. Thank you. Phil.
Aye.
Robin.
Aye.
Eve.
Aye.
And Wes.
Yes.
And me. Yes. Matthew. Yes. All right. We have 17 yeses, 1 abstention.
Great. I will abstain then. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, there's not really much else with the 5 E's. We are going to divvy up some of the TAP to go over in the next meeting, and then also we're going to, I think we need subcommittee members, and Chris and Matthew are making a list of folks for that. And Alyssa went through the Complete Streets policy update. So it'd be advisable, it's an ongoing process, to read the red line proposed Complete Streets document, so we can move forward with that. Phil?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise, and maybe it's really a question for Alyssa, I wanted to raise the issue about sort of how far along we are in this Complete Streets update. So I talked about the sort of concept of living streets, which would add in, well, specifically the sort of performance metrics beyond stormwater, which is being added to the transportation considerations in the Complete Street policy. So a living streets sort of a living streets sort of policy context would, for example, if you were looking at George Floyd Square, that district, you would look at things like sort of artistic elements, you'd look at specifically economic performance that would be hardwired into a living streets evaluation. But again, I think it's really a question for Alyssa, is it so late in the game in this update that sort of asking for a review of the broader living streets concept for any additions to the draft Complete Streets policy?
That's a great question, Phil. I think the short answer is probably, but I'm not sure. There's one more committee meeting that is scheduled for next week. That was not an originally scheduled meeting. We were supposed to be done, and based on feedback that was provided at the last meeting, they decided to schedule an additional one. So we can certainly start some conversation in that space and see what comes of it. But the city folks have been working on updating the policy, I think since October was when I first got emailed about this. So it's been quite a while. And so I imagine that a big shift in what their scope is going to be pretty hard to push forward at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let us know what sort of what float the concept, and if it's been reviewed, and I'd be interested to know.
Oh, and one last thing, for George Floyd Square and the situation surrounding that, and also in Uptown due to the murder of Winston Smith. We will be discussing that more in the 5 E's. So if you're interested in that topic, please attend the next 5E subcommittee. Thanks.
Thanks, Bree. With that, I think I'm going to call the 5E subcommittee report closed for today and move us on to the engineering subcommittee with Dan. And I don't think Marty's here today, so it's just Dan.
Okay, hello. Matthew, I think you're controlling the actions page, and there needs to be an additional action added to that between the two that are there. And it was sent to you via Robin Garwood about an hour and a half ago, and it's regarding the University 4th Street Bikeway. Maybe you have it there.
Yep,
Yes.
I got it.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll begin. So we had 3 projects come before us at our meeting, and the first one was the Lindale Avenue South medians at 25th and 27th. And this was presented at 30% by Jason Stable and Kelsey Folk. This was presented at 15% in March 2021, and the BAC had some questions regarding it, and we wound up asking if they could return at 30% just to see how our comments were reacted to. So they did. And a couple things that did happen. The drawings are different than what was presented in March. They're a little more refined. The drive lanes went from a 13 to a 12 foot. It was a 13-11, and then they became 12-12. The median cut, which was probably our largest question, if they could make a larger or separate cut for the bikes, was not added because 25th and 27th are not on the AAA network. I should back up. There's 2 medians that are being installed at 25th and 27th on Lindale that will make it safer to cross there. And they are temporary solutions. They're described as temporary solutions for a possible full reconstruction 10 or more years down. So there's limitations about what they could do. But the big news was that that a pilot project review is going forward on Lindale Avenue, and the potential of a 4-to-3 conversion in 2022 is being considered when they restripe it. So the resolution is short. It's somewhat just acknowledging that the county and city made the effort to come back and to share with us what they came up with. And so I will read that off for you folks. The BAC supports the Lindale Avenue South 25th and 27th medians as presented. We are appreciative that this returned to the BAC at 30%, where we could learn how the BAC's recommendations were incorporated from the 15% review. We are excited to learn about the upcoming pilot project review for Lindale Avenue 4-to-3 conversion and support its implementation in the 2022 Lindale restriping. So I'll move that if somebody wishes to second it.
Janice, I'll second.
And you know, I guess I could have asked about kind of any questions about the medians beforehand, but are there any questions regarding this or the project?
Looks like Phil has his hand up, Dan.
Thank you, Phil.
Oh, no, I just didn't lower it from before. Sorry.
All right. Okay. So seeing no other questions, if they aren't, I guess you take the roll call, don't you, Alyssa?
I do.
Yeah,
I will.
Okay.
Since it's been, can we just real quick, Janice, or maybe we can just, who made the motion and seconded it for the Hennepin one? Can we just like clarify that, or
Technically, Philip made the motion and I seconded.
okay.
And I'll just throw out there, in the past, we have moved resolutions as a slate. I don't know if folks want to do that today to save a few roll calls. Just throwing it out there.
It's fine by me. I don't
Okay.
think it's anything that's very controversial here. So,
Okay. Let's do that for the remaining three. Lindale, 53rd, and University.
Right. Very good.
Good call,
So
Chris.
the next project that came before us was the University Avenue and 4th Street Bikeway. Basically, this goes from the project boundaries are on University and 4th Street from 10th to Oak Street. The final design is in June 2022 and construction is scheduled for 2023. The presenters gave us a fairly thorough presentation, not only a PowerPoint, but also two detailed drawings of this. An option A, which has a two-way bike facility on the University, which was the BAC's previous recommendation when they came before us. Yeah, it proposes a curb separation of the drive lanes and on-street bike facility on University and 4th Street will remain a buffered bike lane with bollards for both options A and B. Now, option B differed in that instead of a two-way on University, it was a one-way, and it would have bollards and still a curb. On both plans, a curb-separated two-way bike facility on Oak will connect University to 4th Street. This was pretty cool. Minneapolis plans to further extend south to Washington and the existing two-way bikeway on Oak to East River Road. So there's bike signal phasing that's proposed for signal intersections, new traffic islands, 2 on University and 1 on 4th Street. And the drive lanes will be reduced from 3 to 2 on University from Church Street to Oak, and on 4th from Oak to 17th. On-street event parking will be added in the former drive lane across from Williams Arena on 4th Street. Parking for businesses will remain between 13th and 15th on both University and 4th. Some concerns were expressed about the perceived narrow 6-foot bike lane with a curb separation on University in option B. And Robin was kind enough to take this away and to create a resolution for us. So I will read that and we'll go from there. The Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee supports option A, which includes a two-way protected bikeway on the south side of University Avenue for the University and 4th project, and opposes option B. We're thankful to the city and county staff for working to bring forward this option, which BAC has formally supported. The BAC supports curb separation as shown in layout A. The BAC supports tabling the floating bus stops to ensure easy crossing for transit riders, especially people with disabilities. The BAC encourages the project partners to continue to explore off-peak use of the third vehicular lane for parking wherever possible, with the possibility of transitioning to all-day parking in that lane. The BAC supports connecting the existing two-way protected bikeway on the west side of Oak Street from its current terminus at Washington Street up to 4th Street Southeast. So with that, if I have a second, we'll continue.
Second.
And who was that?
That was Robin.
Robin. Oh, super Robin. Okay. Okay. And any discussion on this?
I have a friendly amendment just to say option instead of layout. Is that cool for consistency?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. If we're good with that, we're going to move on to the third one and just vote on all three of these at one time. The third project was 53rd Avenue North Bikeway. It was a proposal by Jasna Stanek from Public Works, and she had a fact sheet with it. So this is at 0%. They are doing a resurfacing project up there right now. They're running gas lines, changing some of the curbs, the corners. However, there are not going to be any bump outs. It's being coordinated with Brooklyn Center. So Brooklyn Center is on the north side, and 53rd Minneapolis is on the south side. So basically, they're considering installing a connector bikeway in 2022 along this 1.2 mile section. 53rd is on the AAA network. It's also, interestingly, there are two bikeways up there which are a mile apart right now, and this is dead center. So you would have a bikeway in Brooklyn Center at 57th Avenue North, which is the the Twin Lakes Regional Trail that goes over to Shingle Creek crossings. This bikeway, and then a off-street bikeway that's on 49th. It doesn't ring true that the streets are larger than that, but I checked, and they're actually it's a mile between them right now. So this year, the work will include ADA ramps to existing sidewalks, curb and gutter improvements, sanitary sewer repairs, no bump outs. Significant sections of 53rd are signed no parking, and there's low use of on-street parking now where permitted. So the action that was written for this was the BAC supports adding a bikeway and recommends eliminating or further reducing parking to match drive lane widths on 49th and 57th Avenues North in order to fully implement a buffered bike facility. Lindale Avenue is a 94 exit entrance, and its overpass bridge needs safety improvements to encourage access to the North Mississippi Regional Trail and Park. Likewise, improvements should be considered on Penn Avenue, which connects to the nearby Shingle Creek Regional Trail a block away. Wayfinding that includes connecting destinations, distances, and important cross routes should be added. The BAC asks that this project be presented again at 15% to review project status and these recommendations. And so if I have a second for that, we'll go forward.
Second.
And that's from whom?
Cadence.
Cadence, thank you, Cadence. Okay, Janice, you have a question.
Well, I just, when you read it, you added an S to needs. The third line, the overpass bridge needs, there should be an S on that.
Okay, thank you. Yep. This is something that I kind of watch a bit because of the overpasses that are in North Minneapolis and how difficult it is to get to the facilities, the park facilities next to the river, and it runs all the way down from 694 down to Plymouth. And they did some really nice improvements on 57th when they put that trail through, and I think this would not only give you promote access to those trails, but also to get across that exit and entrance there that is kind of dangerous. And Marty pointed that out. She lives up in this area. Yeah. So with that, if there's no more questions, we're going to take a vote on all three.
All right, here we go. Armand.
I abstain.
Oh, okay. Abstain for the third one?
On University and Fourth, yeah.
Cool, thank you. So I for the other ones.
Correct. So
got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Bree.
I.
Dan Booty.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
Fantastic. Heather.
Aye. This is fun.
Tyler.
Aye, Captain.
Janice.
Yes on all three.
Jenny.
Aye.
Jesse.
Abstain on all three.
Do I have video? Is Caden still here?
I'm still here. Triple I for me, please.
Kyle. Not here. Maya.
I for all three.
Natalie.
Aye.
Philip.
Aye.
Robin.
I don't know.
Eve.
I cubed.
Wes.
Yes to all.
Will also vote yes for all. So we have so far 16 yeses and 1 abstention for all three and 1 abstention for university.
I will abstain from all as well then. Thanks, Matthew.
All right.
Matthew, do you see Jordan in the chat?
I haven't looked at that, but if you we need to hear it verbally in order to capture it.
I abstain all three.
Oh, okay, there we go. Where is Jordan on this list? Oh, there he is. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're done. Very
Anything
good.
else from you, Dan, for the engineering subcommittee?
That does it.
All right. Thanks for, that was, I think, the fastest engineering subcommittee update where we've passed 3 motions ever. I'm very impressed. With that, I will, next on our agenda is micromobility and bike shares and scooter share overview with Danielle. I'm very excited about this update because the bike share and scooter share updates that we've gotten in the past have been really important to us as a committee and sort of weighing in, especially on bike equity issues and location of different things across the city. So I'm really excited to continue that conversation today with Danielle.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Hopefully I can share a little bit more about my role within the city and what our programming is. And then the main thing that I really want to get out of this is any feedback on how you want to give me feedback on some of these programs. And there's a lot happening in the next year in particular, too, that I would love to hear from everyone on. I'm going to kind of use my Macabod presentation as a guide as I talk through some of the programming, but I guess first of all, Danielle Elkins, I sit within traffic and parking services within Public Works. I joined the city in October of 2018 as a Fuse Executive Fellow through a national fellowship program. I was brought by then Director Hutchison to help the city figure out kind of the future of mobility within the city, which usually define as all things either shared, autonomous, electric, or connected. It's a little bit evolving as, of course, the market evolves. And this was, when I first came, it was right after scooters first launched within the city a couple months later. So a lot of things have changed pretty dramatically within the marketplace within the city since then. And we created this new mobility team, which I'm now leading, and I've been with the city as a full-time employee since December. So right now, we have a bunch of major programs working a lot of future policies, working with the state legislature to also develop these policies. That a lot of these things have not existed in the past. So a lot of change that comes with this work, and but hopefully really complementary with the goals lined in the TAP, and that are the things that are important to this committee, especially. So the probably biggest program you mentioned that I think all you hopefully are familiar with is the Mobility Hub program that we're in our 3rd season for that pilot. We have not launched this year's pilot yet. Unfortunately, our funding for this year is coming from a grant from MnDOT's Office of Sustainability, and the grants have been delayed, mostly paperwork issues. but we're hoping to have those at least deployed by the end of July, if not sooner. Very similar locations to our last year pilot, so focusing on areas of concentrated poverty, figuring out the most complicated situations within the city of how we can deploy these, how do we figure out wayfinding, integration with transit, amenities, and kind of leading us to what we hope to get to is a full capital program. So really am ramping up our ambassador program again, which we piloted last year. So working with community groups to have people on the ground at the mobility hubs to help people engage with different modes of transportation, as well as getting people signed up for the low income pricing programs that both Nice Ride as well as Lyft and Bird have for scooters, trying to do education about those programs as well. And then also using it to engage with the public of what do they think of mobility hubs, what amenities would like to see permanently, as well as, what their kind of in general feedback is on bike and scooter share programs. And particularly this summer because, as many of you know, the Nice Ride contract expires in August. I can assure you that it will not just end in August. It will be, we'll get it through the season, and we're working on that now. But we want to make sure that we're getting feedback from the public and especially from this group on what do we want to see in terms of shared mobility systems, bikes, scooters, whatever may come in the future. What do the residents of the city want to see? How do we write the RFP to make sure that we're getting the best here, that meet our goals, that are expanding the program and kind of whatever way we can. We've done just a little bit in the presentation, and if some of you have seen some of the reports out to City Council as well, we've done a lot of work in terms of data analysis as well on both of the bike share and scooter programs, mostly in the scooter programming, just the way that the contracts are formulated. But we're learning a lot from our scooter data in terms of infrastructure, what people are using, where we need to be putting more infrastructure, whether that's bike lanes, whether that's parking, scooter parking corrals, additional bike parking. We don't really differentiate the scooter versus bike parking. It's all kind of micro-mobility parking. So we know we need more of that throughout the city, and we're using that information to help us figure out where we need to put it. We've also done analysis with our mobility hub pilot to figure out what impact mobility hubs, the installation of them, the placement of the vehicles, as well as the ambassador program, and kind of programming at those sites, the impact it has on ridership, and also worked with Metro Transit to look at transit ridership. And from the first 2 pilot seasons, we found that installing mobility hubs and then especially the programming at mobility hubs increases ridership on all modes. So we are seeing people get more familiar with the modes and more comfortable with taking non-car trips based on the proximity of a mobility hub, knowing that it's consistently going to be there, that they know they can always go to this place and find the modes that they're looking for. What else can I share? A big change from the scooter program as well from 2020 was adding the Lock 2 requirement, hence why we need more infrastructure and bike parking now. And the big goal from that was trying to make sure that the sidewalks stay clear, that we're not obstructing people's paths so they're walking and rolling safely. And we are seeing an improvement in that. People are getting it. It's a challenge. There's still a long way to go in terms of teaching people what is appropriate to attach a scooter to. We are updating our websites in that vein, where we're doing updates to both the scooter and the bike websites, as well as the mobility hub websites. We hired an artist about 1.5 years ago to explain what is a proper place to ride and park a scooter. And so we're also, it's kind of a work in progress right now. If you go to the scooter site right now, you'll see about half of it up, but we're working on it. And hopefully that will be really helpful in terms of educating the public on appropriate behavior with all of these modes. We're also doing a lot in terms of tracking compliance, which both means 311 complaints, understanding where people are riding or parking, any of those issues, as well as we implemented an equity compliance requirement in 2020 in the program, which requires the scooter providers to place a certain percentage in our areas of concentrated poverty and not to place more than 40% of the scooters in our downtown and surrounding areas. And we just finished compliance meetings, our first meetings with the companies last week, and we're going to be publishing a public data dashboard showing their compliance and where we're at in this season. I can say based on what we've seen so far, ridership is a little bit lower on all modes this year. We lost significantly last year because of the pandemic. And I think this year is probably a little bit due to people being vaccinated and leaving town during peak times, less people coming to visit the city, and weather. We had such hot weeks and then some, cold before that. So we're hoping that we'll start to see the ridership increase as the summer weather maybe stabilizes as we go on. Yeah, so we have options in terms of how we're going to proceed with selecting our partners for bikes and scooter share in the future. We will be having a procurement, and what I most like, I guess, to hear from this group is any feedback you have for the RFP, for the program, and how you want to continue to provide feedback to me and my team on the success of these programs, what you would like to see change, what's not working, all of that.
I suppose, Alyssa, would you prefer that I deal with the raised hands, or would you like to?
I can call in people. I see Janice is at the top of the list. Take it away, Janice.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. First, I would love a refresher on what mobility hubs are, also what the ambassador program is. And my third comment is I think the city has done really well with our Nice Ride contract. So I would like to hear what the city's thinking is on the future of that.
Sure. So mobility hubs, our definition is a place where people can connect to multiple modes of transportation to make their trip as safe, convenient, and reliable as possible. It's essentially, for the most part, these are locations that are located near high capacity transit. In some cases, there are neighborhood size kind of nodes where it's near a neighborhood bus stop. For the most part, any mobility hub you're going to go to, you're always going to be able to find transit, bikes, and scooters, and some kind of like information amenity of that sort that we're figuring out. What the ultimate goal is that there's some kind of visual marker that shows you are at a mobility hub, which means you can find these modes here, and then we will direct people to those modes. We're also working to integrate the EV car share program that we're working on with Excel and St. Paul, that would also be a mode provided at these locations. And what we've been testing out, we've been working with the Musicant group for the last couple of years to be putting out, if you've seen the blue boxes that some people look like, they think they look like blue Swiss cheese blocks. Those are kind of trying to try something out in terms of tactical urbanism, figuring out they're movable. So where do people actually want to sit in proximity to these different modes? We've seen people move them into transit centers, not surprising. We've had people move them near libraries to get access to charging outlets, all really insightful in terms of how people want to interact in these spaces. We've also experimented with different other amenities attached to them. We've had, like the first year we had a little mailbox, and so communities could put in information and people started using it to share different things that were going on in the community. It's a place you can get information. We've also done some like plants and kind of beautifying within these areas, and as well as adding like additional bike parking in these areas. We make sure that the companies are deploying extra bikes and scooters in these locations. We do siting plans with all the companies to coordinate everything. We also tested a locker system with Hennepin County Lockers, Hennepin County Library. So we put in last year these basically kind of kits that had a face mask, hand sanitizer, information on human services, and kind of job search assistance. We also did signage. So it was like, what are nearby kind of landmarks, and by each of these different modes, whether walking, scootering, biking, taking the bus, how far would the trip be for those? What we're going to be testing before the capital program and looking at this year is additional like lighting, more permanent signage. What are other projection or lighting systems we can do to make it more obvious that you're in a mobility hub and provide mode finding? It's kind of better than wayfinding. It's making sure you can find and go between the different modes within this smaller area. And then the ambassador program we started using last year is we worked with community organizations to staff the mobility hubs and help people interact, as well as do engagement, on-site engagement and maintenance. So making sure that the area stays clean, that the different pieces and amenities, the signage and everything is staying well kept up. We also put a parklet at one of the locations at Penn and Laurie and did some events where the community came out and painted the parklet and learned more about these different programs. And the hope is that we'll continue to expand the ambassador program so that we'll figure out like what's working as a model in terms of maintenance and engagement at these sites. And last year was the first year too that we extended it a little bit into the winter time to look at snow clearance issues as well. So near bus stops and kind of looking at what effort that would potentially take at these like core locations. And this entire project is being coordinated obviously with all of our providers, but also Metro Transit, who Met Council is actually doing a regional mobility hub planning study right now that we're coordinating with them on. And we're also talking about kind of the branding and color systems and signage and all the things that we need to test together as a region and what's going to be regional versus city specific in the future. So hopefully that answers mobility hubs. Is there a second question that I missed?
Oh, the third question was just about the plans about Nice Ride, but I think probably other people have questions.
Dan Booty.
Thanks. Just regarding Nice Ride, I guess a few pieces of my feedback personally is that I definitely like having an option that doesn't require a phone. So the key with Nice Ride has been a huge thing for me personally, and I'm sure it ties in a little bit with equity issues as well. And I like having the annual membership for bikes that don't need a per mile amount. So like the non-electric bikes. I know there's a big move to electric bikes, but it's nice to just know that your membership covers any use of the bike. And then for scooters, I guess just an issue that I've come across lately is that they have been overwhelming some of the primary bike parking at a lot of places that like grocery stores and restaurants or breweries, just like where everybody has frequent locking and unlocking of bikes, they're taken over by scooters. And I don't think it's always by users. Like I asked at the grocery store at Seward Co-op and they weren't aware of people using those scooters necessarily. I think they were just, moved there as part of the distribution. So just something that I've kind of run into where it's spots that should be like lock and unlock quickly have been totally dominated by scooters, making it more difficult to find bike parking.
Yeah, we've heard that from a few business districts, which is why we really want to invest more in bike parking because the issue is we need more everywhere. I have seen like on Central, there were some complaints that near the co-op in Northeast that there wasn't enough, that the scooters were taking up too much, and they was the perception that customers were not using the scooters. I can say based on historical data, customers are using the scooters. And even based on the feedback from the companies, they're constantly having to rebalance and move scooters back because people are constantly using them to get home with their groceries.
That's good. That's good feedback.
I think Cadence, you're up next.
My comment is exactly related to that, and I even sent photos to Bree as part of my BAC field trip photographs, specifically for Central and Lowry, specifically for my office bike parking, which is technically not public bike racks, and not being able to lock my bike to these bike racks. I don't know if I'm allowed to share my screen since I didn't submit these photos beforehand. but based on my experience, I was out at Central and Lowry, and the service providers were literally locking scooters to every available bike rack. So I did not see a single user. It was the service provider, and especially in front of a bike shop, and a brewery and a grocery store. It was incredibly frustrating to also literally be out for work to ask businesses about what they want to see and what they need. And having this public resource be totally eaten up by scooters. I was also frustrated because my place of work only provides 2 bike racks for like 40 people, and we regularly fill them up. And so if I don't have a place to park my bike, like I literally don't even have street poles near my office to park. So it was a little bit problematic. But I would highly recommend, I love the dual scooter, Nice Ride, docking stations. They are amazing. I didn't realize that they had scooter parking capability until later that day. I biked past one, and I also snapped a photo that I could show on my screen right now about how amazing that technology was. But I would really like to see more of the dual bike rack scooter Darrow racks be provided. And I mean, it will also support local industry, but please have service providers not take the very limited bike parking that is available for people who are already biking and have been biking for like years.
Yeah, that is part of the area that's a challenge. So part of the challenge with like the area you're talking about in particular is that based on the mapping is an area of concentrated poverty. So they're required to put a certain number of scooters there. So they're frantically trying to comply with the equity requirement. I purposely reduced the number of scooters that they had to put in that area this year because of the infrastructure challenge and the feedback from the community. We reduced it so they only had to do a minimum of 25 in that area. It's based on feedback that I've gotten, it's still too much. And so I have let them slip purposely on their compliance in that area because I want to remove this pressure from the infrastructure and make sure there is enough bike parking. So based on our last compliance meetings, they're supposed to be backing off a little bit. So hopefully the problem does get better, but let me know if it doesn't and it continues to be an issue. But another thing I will say is as we start to put the mobility hubs out, we're going to start putting more of these bike racks out. And we could also make a request from Nice Ride to add another lightweight station potentially. So if there's specific locations, let me know.
Jenny Borden has a hand up, and then Bree.
Thank you. Hi, Danielle, too. Thank you for being here. As I always say about bike share, we in Minneapolis Public Schools would love to see our students be able to use it and use it in low-cost ways. And we've seen other cities figure out 16 and 17-year-olds at least. And so I guess my question for you is just an update on what we might see in the RFP, and might there be some requirements for youth use and maybe access for low-income youth?
Yes, I'm really glad you asked. I should have shared this. So one of the main questions that I'm putting into the user survey is age requirements. So currently the age is you have to be 18 to ride. We put purposely in the TAP that we were going to try and lower that to at least 16. State statutes, depending on the type of vehicle, scooter versus electric bike versus bike, there are different age requirements. They're all different, unfortunately. And then with helmet versus not helmet is another requirement. As much feedback on the age requirement that you guys have, the better that I am going to put this in there. I think the main concern was some insurance requirements from the providers. And so I've also asked them to look into that already. I guess the additional update is we have the Fair School in downtown as a planned mobility hub and testing site with DID, looking at the Alloway project as a potential test location of how we can do engagement with one school in particular. And also hopefully we can do some engagement events once they're back in school to get them signed up through the free and reduced lunch programs and making that eligible for Nice Ride for All as well. And am fully intending to write that kind of programming into the RFP also.
Awesome, thank you. And just when you were saying on as much support, or would a resolution be helpful from us about, you know, having youth in the RFP, or having like that included?
If there, I say, because we have the 16 piece in the TAP, we have documentation showing that that's what we're trying to work for, and that's what I'm going to be putting in. If you guys want to support that further, by all means. If you think it should be younger, that would be another situation. But right now, my intention is 16.
Okay, thank you.
Bree, you're up.
Cool. So, okay. So just to clarify, I have seen the bike racks for the e-bikes, the blue ones, and just to preface, I worked on that when I worked at Darrow. But are there specific scooter racks that is, or are they the same? What?
You can lock a nice ride black bike or a lift scooter to the blue rack.
Oh, okay. So they're not different. Okay.
Yeah, it's the same rack. Bird scooters technically cannot be locked to the blue ones, but
gotcha.
They work together. We figured that out.
Okay, yeah. So are there any discussion on changing the bike parking ordinance for the city, especially for businesses? Like Cadence was mentioning that, like, you know, to maximize that. And I know you have like a 50-50 program, but I mean, the city provides so much free street parking for vehicles and cars. So, you know, is there discussion and movement towards free bike parking for folks, so it would incentivize more?
So one change that has recently come because of the parking and TDM ordinance update, we made sure that investing in mobility hubs and bike parking was a really big part of the point system for TDM. So any new developments could get like significant points by creating space to add these mobility hub amenities, particularly on the high capacity adjacent to high capacity transit. And then I guess a thing to be thinking about is we'll also be developing our curbside policy, which will be kind of the street side policy of looking at where we allocate space, and that will be a big part of that conversation as well, which we'll be starting.
Cool. And lastly, so it sounds like low-income areas that you are mandating providers to provide scooters and bike share isn't matching up with what number, I guess, the city thought would be needed. Do you know why that is the case, and do you have any solutions for that?
So this was a piloted concept that we implemented in 2020, and originally the numbers were based on first of all the ACP 50 maps that are at this point from 2017, 2018, so they're outdated. So part of the challenge is with the Met Council starting to change their ACP mapping program, and with just the rapid change in actual data and demographics within the ACPs and the changing shapes of the ACPs within the city, the challenge is we're measuring on a changing metric, if that makes sense. And we made a guess within the 2020 program of the goal was to get 30% of scooters and scooter trips to be in ACP areas. We're seeing year over year around 20% of trips starting or ending in ACPs. So we are trending in that direction and trying to get to that. With that target, we then assign percentages to the 3 different ACP areas. So you have the Northeast one, you have the North Minneapolis one, and the South one based on the like 2017, 2018 mapping. The North ACP has not really changed in the last couple of years. South has changed pretty significantly. The shape is changing, and the Northeast one doesn't exist anymore. So that's why I, within this year, reduced it in trying to alleviate the infrastructure challenge, but also the fact that the demographics in that Northeast area have changed significantly. And the response from the community, I also got feedback from Macapod that it was creating some challenges for our senior living centers in that area as well. So what we're now figuring out is, we're creating equity frameworks within the city. We're reevaluating what Met Council is going to do with the ACP mapping. And I'm going to build that into the program, what we've learned of, do these percentages make sense? Is it helping us get to our trip goals? I can't say, are we where we're getting in terms of the percent of trips in the 2021 season yet that are in ACPs, because the data takes 2 weeks to process. So the data is still doing its processing. And we haven't started analytics on that. I only have real-time information to know where the providers have been placing them. They are being compliant, like I said, with the exception of Northeast, because we personally have backed off on that because of the issues that we're seeing. They have been compliant in North and South. And so it does seem to be working in those areas. And I think that those will roughly stay the same based on what we're learning.
Okay, and I guess I just have a question based on that. Like in the RFP, I know, the quotas for that, but are you mandating outreach to those communities as well and accessibility programs?
So they've always had outreach. They're required within, so there's kind of 2 pieces. There's the actual RFP and what we require and ask and judge them based on. And then there's the contract and the license agreement that we actually execute with them, that they are then responsible for once they've been selected. So right now we're working on the RFP while they're working under a current license agreement that says you have to do this many engagement events this summer, you have to comply with these ACP equity areas. And we will basically, once we get through this procurement process, do a new license agreement again, which will kind of mandate the same thing. So it's kind of, you have these requirements in 2 different places. So and the feedback, and what the results we're getting from the data will inform both of those for the future. But I don't know if that answers it fully, but they are required to do at least 2 engagement events per month per company. So they've done a couple already this year. They're going to do a lot more. They've sent me schedules. They also, once we do the mobility hubs and have those out, they'll start coordinating with the ambassadors to do a lot more of the programming as well. And then you asked about accessibility as well. So I recently have been speaking with the Twin Cities Adaptive Cycling Group about feedback for how to help scale more adaptive programs in the city, and any requirements we can put on the providers or partnerships that they could do with them as well.
Danielle, before I call on other folks, I just want to interject with a little bit of a question around timeline. So you mentioned that the Nice Ride, the bike share contract is up. I think it was supposed to be up last year and then maybe got a 1-year extension because of the pandemic.
It was always August 1st this year.
It was always August 1st. But I'm curious about, so there's the extension and then obviously a timeline for deciding on a new contract. And so, in terms of when our committee should be weighing in, would love some information from you on timeline. I also know like the scooter share situation feels like it's changed every year that I've been paying attention to the scooter share situation. But I think that would help us understand if we're going to be seeing you again this summer and have other opportunities to give you feedback, or if we really need to be thinking about putting together like a resolution today with some of our comments or any of that.
So the timing right now is maybe kind of backdating from, we need to have new agreements and everything in place for a 2022 season. So the goal is to have everything kind of ready and selected by the end of the year. from there, you know, they will have the extension through the season. So we'll, don't worry about operations in terms of bikes and scooters for the rest of 2021. That is fine. But in terms of a procurement for bikes and scooters, that will be in the fall. So you basically, I would say, up until mid-August, you can be providing feedback to me.
Great, that's really helpful. And that'll happen for scooters on the same timeline as bikes?
Yeah, yeah, okay. We're gonna do things together, and it will be still working through our options, but the assumption is I will not be back again next summer. We will do something. The interesting thing about this is trying to balance the fact that the market is still evolving, things are still changing really rapidly, but wanting to have, now that we really have understand the industry, we understand how to manage them, we understand how to do license agreements and data and all these things, we can do slightly longer agreements, we can have better partnerships with these companies and have them invest in the longer term of being a partner within the city, but not so long that if things dramatically change in the marketplace that we're, you know, not getting all that we could be.
Thanks, that's helpful. I'll throw in a couple of comments and then Cadence and Phil, and then we probably need to move on. Really interested in coordination with St. Paul, right? That bike share experience across the river is super important. It's also important with scooters, but I think it, because of the nature of scooters and bike share, it's a little bit different. Really support some of the comments folks have made around, you know, the parking stations, in particular, the idea of taking away space for some of that street parking and turning those not into parklets, but into parking for scooters and bikes. You know, one thing that we've given feedback around over the last number of years, which continues to be a challenge, is flex in sizes of bikes. So the Nice Ride bikes are biased toward people of a certain height. And so thinking about how we have more flexibility there and if there's any possibility around that. You know, one thing that I would love to see the city explore around mobility hubs is restrooms. We have really not a lot of public restrooms in the city, and that seems important. And I know that's like a bigger lift. And then just want to put in a plug for, I think every year people are always wishing the bikes were out a little bit later or came out a little bit earlier. And the more we can look at extending the season, right? Like Chicago does bike share at one point, at least they did all year round. And so how can we move in a direction where we're not taking our bike share off the streets for 8 months of the year? So those are just some comments. With that, I'll turn it over to Cadence.
It's great feedback. All things I've been thinking about.
Yeah, so I personally would love to read any draft RFPs. I know that, you know, there may be challenges on whether you can share that with us or not, especially back to Jane's question about, you know, 16 and 17-year-olds. You had mentioned that y'all may be looking at that, like, but if they are required or not to have a helmet, like those are small details where I would definitely have an opinion. Like I would not require helmets because I think that that's going to have the opposite of the intended effect, you know, making it accessible theoretically to more ages, but then also not. So that's just a comment about that I would like to see it. And if that maybe can be brought back to us or at least shared with us to review it before it's approved by the city. And the other comment that I have is about like the policy and program design wise for streets. Like a lot of these major corridors are being redesigned right now. So particularly at Central and Lowry, there are going to be intersection improvements, and Lowry Avenue itself is going to be reconstructed. So there's a huge opportunity there to better understand how space can be better utilized by bike and scooter share. But I think that, you know, having the understanding that, oh, there's always going to be 25 scooters at that intersection based on, you know, I know the changing ACP maps and whatnot, but 25 scooters is a lot. And so I think that if design teams had that information or expectation, they could better respond to that during the design process to reduce some of, the challenges with limited right of way and space. I think a lot of people who ride bikes are feeling like what little bit of amenities we have are quickly being swamped and outpaced for scooters. When really we shouldn't be taking space from people who bike. We should be taking space from the mode that we're trying to shift away from, which is people who are driving.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cadence. Phil and Dan, and then we're going to close comments so that we can move on to our last agenda item.
Danielle, thank you very much. This is really very informative and interesting. A couple of comments. I just want to reinforce Dan Booty's comment about the key fobs. For a couple of years, I was rushing off to grab a bike and then catching an express bus for commuting. And the key fobs, they just lower the barrier to it. It's like, I can do this. Though you pretty much, but if you pretty much need a computer at home to see if a bike is there. But, the particular station I was doing this every day for 2 years. So I kind of knew, at 6:53 there would be a bike there. So the key fob was nice. And then related, so for people using a electric nice ride, I was pretty sure that with a flip phone, primitive flip phone, and I have no idea what percentage people use and whether they're stable or going down, whether older people are keeping hold of their flip phones. But in any case, as I recall, it was a little difficult to use a flip phone to rent an e-bike at one of the kiosks. So just sort of one of those things. Now, of course, most people are riding with someone who's got a smartphone, but I think just giving some thought.
Yeah. We're seeing smartphone usage going up significantly, partially because there's also a lot of government programs that provide them at subsidies. The bigger challenge we found was the banking access issue. So people not having a credit card to be able to use a lot of these services, which is why we are also, I guess there's two pieces to the kind of broader mobility as a service conversation we're having too, which is when you sign up for Nice Ride for All, you can also with Fair Financial, sign up for a bank account and get a credit card. So they solve both issues for you. And then you have the reduced fare. You only pay the $5 for the season. We would like to make that a universal program for all shared mobility. We've been doing a lot of conversations on the broader regional conversation with Metro Transit on mobility as a service now that they've redone their mobile app as well, on how do we get to the point where if you are a recipient of any human services within the city of Minneapolis, you are already eligible for $1 Metro Transit rides, reduced fare rides on both bikes and scooters, and it should be automatic. You should just get it. You shouldn't have to go through sign-up processes for each individual mode. So we've been trying to get federal funding. Unfortunately, our grant application wasn't selected in 2019, but we're continuing to push for funding in the Met Council. We're also have developed a national working group to try and solve this issue on the back end data side as well. And we have support from Hennepin County and their data team. We're just trying to find the funding to do the project and fix all these issues. But it's a really big priority for us that we do think is really important. And I guess I was going to mention, it's also at the point where all of our providers are required to have open APIs. So all of the trip planning apps now should have open data access to any of our providers within Minneapolis. So if you go into, for example, the transit app, you can see all of the mode and their availability too, and trying to make that so that it's a competitive market.
Cool, thank you.
Dan Miller.
Yeah, this is just, it's a little bit regarding sizing of bikes, and I don't have a lot of experience in this, but it's just something to put in your ear. I was trying to help a friend at a station to get on a bike and size them up, and I tried several of the bikes and I couldn't get that seat to budge. I mean, the cam lock was just locked down, like, and that could have to do with just whether somebody's not checking, or it's perhaps somebody that's locking that thing down that is much stronger. But it's just something worth noting that having a little bit of flexibility in your seat height makes it a lot easier to ride some of those things. So
yeah, we've talked about that they're just really difficult to move. I personally struggle with being able to
Yeah.
move it. I've also, I guess, alternatively had the issue of my seat dropping in the middle of a ride, unfortunately. So yeah, it's something we've been talking about. The bike size issue is also something we've talked about. I know the latest model for Lyft's electric bike is taking into account it goes significantly lower. So the industry-wide, they are getting better at manufacturing more adaptive bikes that handle more heights.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Danielle. Obviously, we have a lot of thoughts and opinions. I think we will continue this discussion probably at a future subcommittee meeting, but hopefully we'll look forward to being in conversation with you throughout the summer. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
All right, last on our agenda is a conversation about the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Design. I think I got that acronym right, MUTCD, and that's going to be led by Matthew and Jesse.
Sure. Given the time, I'll be very quick because I think you'd all probably rather hear from Jesse than me, and I appreciate that. My part's going to be also a little more boring. Just, what is the MUTCD? Who uses it? Why it's important, and then Jesse's going to share sort of some opinions and observations that I agree with as well, and we'll just leave it at that for now, and we can talk about it as we go. The main thing is that there was a recent update to like a new edition proposed for the MUTCD, which Alyssa got it almost all correct. The last word D is devices. And that's important. So I'm just going to read the FHWA, so the Federal Highway Administration, publishes the MUTCD, which contains all national design, application and placement standards, guidance, options, and supports provisions for traffic control devices. The purpose of the MUTCD is to provide uniformity of these devices, including signs, signals, and pavement markings, to promote safety and efficiency on our highways and streets. So all of that, what that means is basically everything you see in the street, from the yellow skip dashes to differentiate two-way travel, to all the signs, all the signals, basically everything you see is governed by this document on our public roadways. And the document itself is huge. It's like the one I'm looking at, their website, which is mutcd.fhwa.dot.gov. And it's an 862-page document, and it's frankly boring. It's not something that you read for fun. And a lot of it is maybe considered mundane. I'm not an expert in MUTCD. We have engineers and others that are, but a lot of it is stuff that you're probably not going to get too fired up about. So the stop signs are required to be an octagon, white letters on red. It's like those types of things. And then a variety of both standards and options. So some things are just required, some are optional, but the MUTCD also goes way beyond just some of those what I would say mundane traffic signals, signs, and things like that, and probably gets in the way, I would say. Now I'm going to opinion. All right, so everything I just said is sort of like fact, what's in there. I think there are problems with the MUTCD, and oftentimes I think the PAC and the BAC, you may hear like, oh, we can't do that, like that signal isn't warranted, a variety of things. We can't have a rainbow crosswalk because we can't have that color, and different things like that. A lot of that is because of what's in the MUTCD. So I'm going to stop there. We can continue to talk about it whenever, maybe whenever it comes up or whatever, but there's been a tremendous nationwide sort of engagement with agencies and things like that. There's coordination with NACTO, so the National Association of City Transportation Officials, And then I'm going to stop talking now. MnDOT and Jesse has been involved as well, kind of reviewing it from a ped bike and otherwise perspective. So Jesse, why don't you share some thoughts with us?
Sure, yeah. So I am not an expert in the MUTCD either. I am a planner by education, but being in MnDOT, it's a largely engineer-based organization, and I was a part of the technical engineering committee that reviewed the new draft of the MUTCD. So I do have some opinions, observations, and those types of things. Like Matthew said, the reason why we're talking about this is because, like, it's definitely a document out there that a lot of it can be there is interpretation within it, and it depends on the organization who's interpreting it. So engineers with Minneapolis may interpret it a little bit more loosely than engineers with MnDOT, just because of different cultures that exist there, and so that's why you may hear different types of answers. So just to go over some like points of like what maybe how the MUTCD misses the mark. Um, the existing one, and then also the new draft as well is what I'm referring to. I think first and foremost, and it was developed for vehicle traffic. There's no chapter on pedestrians. Pedestrians are kind of sprinkled throughout the whole thing. There is a chapter on bicycling. And in the draft, somehow a whole new chapter got added on autonomous vehicles, even though it's only like 5 pages long or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely a document that was first developed for vehicles, and that's why organizations like NACTO have kind of just called for a whole rewrite of that document. That does seem like pretty extreme, but it is something that at this point may be needed. And so like the AASHTO document, so the big engineering document that looks at roadway design, which is different from this one. That one just had a new addition, and people called for a rewrite. They went ahead and kind of added things into the new edition, but there is a whole new rewrite in the works right now. Same thing with MnDOT's design manual. So these types of things do happen. So there's some hope there. So that's like the first thing, is just like it's developed vehicles first. I think one of the more personal things for everyone here is that the MUTCD in its like quest for uniformity forgets that it goes through places where people live, work, and recreate, or places where they used to do that, and they can't no longer, because that land was, for simple terms, stolen from them. And so like this comes into conversation like rainbow colored crosswalks and other things like that help create a sense of place or bring a certain amount of pride to a community. This manual says crosswalks have to be this color, and they can only be this color because people might loiter in the crosswalks and take pictures in them. And then I tell people, well, go to like the famous Beatles crosswalk. That's just a standard crosswalk. People take pictures of that one all the time. So that conversation is null. But it forgets that it goes through places, and like there's businesses and houses and all different things that are next to our transportation corridors, and the uniformity of the manual doesn't really account for that. There's no good way of incorporating those things into the travel way. So it kind of takes away some of the uniqueness of those places. I'd say another thing about the document is I call it has paternalistic concerns about pedestrians and cyclists. And maybe I'll just give some examples. So there's some new definitions for pedestrians and for cyclists in this next version. I think they're new, or they're just slight rewrites. Pedestrians are defined as alert and attentive. They have to be functioning in a lawful manner, appropriate for the facility, and on and on and on. So like those are what the target road users are supposed to be. And so it doesn't really account for like it does bring in disabilities, but it doesn't really account for just like how people move as a body, and you know the different sociological things behind that. The same thing goes for cycling. They lump cyclists in with vehicle traffic because that's kind of like the American way of treating bicycle traffic, is to lump it with vehicles, not pedestrians. Also says cyclists, you know, need to be in an alert and attentive state, need to be reasonable and prudent, need to be in a lawful manner. So like all these traffic control devices, they are designed around the fact that people need to like fit these definitions in order for the system to work. And it also, like, as far as going back to the paternalistic piece, looking at like how there's certain instances where like an engineer can kind of require like a cyclist to use a two-stage turn queue box if there's too many traffic lanes, the volumes are high and the speeds are high. I understand that most people would want to use a safer facility like that, but in my past experience for providing those safer facilities, you never really want to require those facilities because there are individuals who are comfortable riding in traffic. And once you start requiring the use of a specific facility, you start building more enemies into the bike facility building process. I think one of the really big beefs is that this manual is pretty slow to react to changes. The latest edition that is now being updated, it was last written in 2009. There's been some interim approvals and since then, but the manual itself hasn't really had a refresh since 2009, and that causes a lot of problems, especially for cycling, because we really want to be able to keep up with what we're figuring out and researching is new and improved and safer and more comfortable. There's within the last 11 years, there's been so many advancements in cycling infrastructure that it's kind of crazy that it takes that long to get this manual updated. Some of that is because of the past federal administration having a no new rules policy, but it just in general, the document does take forever to update. And then I think the very last thing I wanted to talk about is like there is a geometric design manual that's separate from this, but this manual is focused on the paint, on the signs, and on the signals, those things that control traffic control devices. They're not, it's not necessarily a manual for the dimensions for these things, which is really weird because paint sometimes defines what a bicycle facility is. And so this document sometimes overreaches without having like the right authority to do so, to say like that the bike facility has to be in this particular configuration or bend out from this intersection that much. And so there's some challenging aspects of having to really grapple with like different nuances between what the AASHTO guide says and what NACTO guide says, and then what the MUTCD guide says, and they don't always agree with each other. And so picking the right one to go with is always challenging, and that's also oftentimes leads to let's just not do it. And so that's basically, I know it was really fast, but that's all I had to say.
I just want to add just a couple more quick thoughts, and then let's maybe wrap it up. You know, we're trying to do a lot with bicycle signalization in Minneapolis, and it's very hard. Like I think it's like there's poor guidance and poor rules in the MUTCD, where it's like sometimes we just want green to mean go, and like, you know, that paternalistic thing, like they won't let you have green mean go if like anything is turning across that. And that's just very challenging. And another one is you know, the concept of you know, warrants for a new signal, and like either a certain number of people need to be like hit or fatally hit, or like, you know, unreasonable number of people seen trying to attempt the crossing. to put up a signal. And so there's a lot of things where it's like, you have planners and engineers and advocates and you all advisors that are like, we should do this, and then it's like, well, we can't because of this document. So those are just some more examples of how it's problematic. But I think we'll leave it there. We can always talk about this more. We can talk about it as it comes up in projects. But we told you we would talk about this, and we finally were able to bring it to you. Alyssa, back to you.
Thanks. I think Bree has one question, and then we will move on to announcements.
Yeah, so with this information, like what can the BAC do to help push this forward so it's not so messed up?
I'll say, unfortunately, I don't think anything at this point.
That's a really challenging part about it, is you
Yeah.
can't really do much about it. There was a comment process to have this looked at a few months ago, and we like MnDOT submitted comments, Minneapolis submitted comments, and all these different organizations. Enough people did submit comments where I think they will make changes. But yeah, it's hard as the BAC to do so.
I think the important thing, Bree, though, is I think part of it is just being aware of what the problem is, so that like when there's a design that we're wrestling with, we may say like, oh, the MUTCD says this, and so maybe we need to brainstorm ways around that, or maybe you could encourage us to, like Jesse said, interpret it a little looser than we are, maybe, or like maybe we should. You can do requests for experiments. So I guess I shouldn't say nothing. That's wrong. There's kind of a lot, but being aware of what this what it is, what the MUTCD is probably a good start, and then we can try to work together to get around the barrier if that's what it is.
Yeah, if we can't get around the barrier as it's written, I'd say like one of the best things you could probably do is we say, no, you can't do it because the MUTCD say, well, can we try to push for a request for experimentation? That there is a process for that. It takes a while, but it is there.
Okay.
Great question, Bree. Thank you. And thanks to Jesse and Matthew for bringing in some technical information sharing. I know that's something that kind of came up in the 5E's work planning, and it's exciting to see that happening in real time. So with that, I will flip over to announcements. Tyler?
Hey, everyone. I was asked by Carrie Christensen, who is another planner over at the Minneapolis Park Board, to talk about the Graco Park survey that is out. I just put the survey in the link, or in the chat. It's an incredibly long link. Apologize for that, but just click on it. And you can check out the project and enter in any of your thoughts on the project. So Graco Park is where Halls Island is, just north of Plymouth Avenue Bridge on the east bank of the Mississippi River. It's where we built the new island. And so Carrie and others are looking to the BAC and the PAC for input as they move through the process. And Carrie and others from the project will come to the next, the August the August 5E committee to talk a little bit more about it. But in the meantime, she just asked me to share with you the survey, and it'd be great to get as many folks interested in the project as they can, and as much thought, right off the bat. And this is a project that's just getting started, so give it some ideas. Thank you.
And for folks that are not on the chat, the website is aflandarc.com /Graco-Park-Community-Engagement-1. So that's AFLANDARC.com. Yeah. So you don't need that really long.
Thanks. Dan Miller.
Yeah, I just, Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think next month is the change in the engineering subcommittee meeting from the third Tuesday to the second Tuesday of the month. And you should have that already. Millicent sent that out. Should have an
That
invite.
feels right, Dan.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I have one announcement, which is kind of a non-announcement. So we've been meeting online since whenever our meetings came back online last year. I think it was around July or August, after a couple month hiatus, and a lot of folks in a lot of spaces are starting to go back in person. And I just wanted to kind of loop folks in, and I will send out an email also after the meeting because we had a number of folks drop off early. Just that we kind of don't know what's coming as a committee, right? Obviously, the clerk's office has had a lot to say in interpreting guidelines that are coming from outside the clerk's office. We've had Minneapolis state of emergency. We've had state of Minnesota state of emergency. We have the state open meeting law mandate, right? So there are a lot of different things that have sort of shaped the requirement of us meeting online. And a lot of those things have rolled out very quickly with kind of no advance notice to all of us. So I just want to give folks kind of a mental heads up that like I'm expecting sometime in the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to be having this discussion about going back in person, and it's probably going to be a pretty reactive discussion to decisions that are made at levels above our committee and potentially above the city, or accounting for things above the city. So I just wanted folks to be aware. I will, if I find out anything, I will obviously keep you all in the loop, but just didn't want folks to be surprised by the fact that it is going to be probably an abrupt shift to something, whether that something is, we are committed to online meetings for another year, or we are suddenly all back in person, or there is suddenly a hybrid option. I just imagine it's not going to be a particularly smooth rollout. So just wanted you all to know that like I and Matthew Deardahl will do the best that we can to communicate with all of you about that, but I expect it to be a little bit of a bumpy ride. So nothing's changing, and I have no information about anything changing, but I expect that we will get some information at some point. If anyone has any questions about my non-announcement, please let me know. But I will email that out after the meeting as well. With that, I am not seeing any other hands raised. Oh, Bree.
Yeah, I know there was discussion about having off-site August meeting or something, or a bike ride. Is there any update on that?
Not currently. I have a conversation on the book scheduled with Matthew for Friday to talk a little bit about that. My hope is that we could have a virtually scheduled meeting and kind of all log in from our various phones and devices, even if we were to meet up in person, and then be done with the meeting and go on a bike ride. But for context, for folks who don't know, typically August, we have the annual BAC member bike ride, where we spend the first 15 minutes or so on business, and then we take a ride together to see some recent infrastructure projects that that we have helped shape, and see what those look like in real time. So hoping to have more information for all of you about that in early to mid-July. Okay, with that, I am going to call us adjourned. Thank you everyone for staying late. We had some really great discussions today. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your Wednesday. And I will see you all again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Bye.
Go Loons.
Bye.